Welcome to the latest edition of Hour in the Now from the St. Louis Press Club, taking a look at the way journalism works these days. My name is Dale Singer. I was a longtime reporter and editor here in St. Louis and now a member of the board of the Press Club. My two guests today are going to introduce themselves right now. Go ahead.
I'm Sarah Fenske. I am the executive editor of the company that owns the Riverfront Times, and I'm also the executive director of the River City Journalism Fund.
And I'm Richard Weiss, longtime reporter, editor at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Dale was an esteemed colleague of mine, and I'm now chair of the River City Journalism Fund.
Okay, we were also esteemed classmates in high
right.
school many years ago, but that's another story. Well,
That's a great St. Louis story right there, you guys.
I would like to point out that you were older than me.
And still am.
Yes,
but not by much.
I'm catching up.
Okay. So anyway, let's get to the topic at hand. I understand that the River City Journalism Fund began life as before Ferguson, beyond Ferguson. So let's talk about that organization first, what it was, why it was started, when it was started, and how it morphed into what it is now.
Yeah, I have the so-called elevator speech for that, but the elevator goes to the top of the Empire State Building, so bear with me. While back, this actually dates back, as the name would imply, to the Ferguson unrest. And I was just at the time, I guess, with you, Dale, we were working with St. Louis Beacon. And from there, I got in touch with general manager at the Beacon, I guess the former general manager, Nicole Hudson, who had been drafted to work with the Ferguson Commission. And I said to Nicole, if I can be helpful in any way, please let me know. And she said, well, we will be in need of storytellers, I think. And she got in touch with me, and the Ferguson Commission set up an organization, a nonprofit called Forward Through Ferguson, which was to push an agenda in the community to achieve racial equity as best we could. And you may remember, Dale and Sarah, that this commission put forward 187 suggestions, recommendations to achieve racial equity in our community. And there's a lot of people thought it was way too much, but nevertheless, moving ahead, that we wanted this group wanted to persuade the community that they need to be concerned and interested in achieving racial equity. It was a good thing not only for marginalized communities, but for the whole metropolitan area. So I was assigned, I got a great assignment to write stories about people who across generations had struggled in this inequitable system we'd set up in our region. And my editor asked me, I asked the editor, what do you want me to do? And what a great response he gave me. Never got this at the Post-Dispatch. He says, well, what do you think we should do? And I said, oh, well, I think we should do something like Isabel Wilkerson did with in her book, The Warmth of Other Suns, which had just come out. And what she had done was follow families across generations. And all of them were part of the Great Migration from the South to the North. And I said, well, we could do this in a kind of a St. Louis kind of way. And we would write stories about families in St. Louis who had lived here for generations and what they were up against in living in this town, going back to the turn of the 20th century to the present day and find out what they were up against. And so I wrote a first story chronicling this, and everybody was pretty happy with it, and we were ready to roll that out. And the director, Nicole, found another job, and they brought in an interim director, and the interim director said, well, thanks for your efforts, but we want to go in another direction. So I got back to my editor, and I said, what do we do with this story? And he said, well, I think you should put it out there, get it, give it to the Post-Dispatch or wherever you can do that in St. Louis American. And I said, well, we were going to do one of these like every 3 months. And he says, well, you don't have any funding for that. Don't have any support for that. You'll just have to do it yourself. So we did get that first story published, and that was kind of a proof of concept. It was a good story, well received. And then I thought, well, I want to keep doing this. And so I got in touch with people. I'm not a wealthy person, but I know people who are, part of my own personal privilege, I guess. And I went to Dick Weil, for instance, who was former editor at the Post-Dispatch. And I said, Dick, I want to do more of these. Can you give me some dough to get it going? And he reached into his pocket and helped me out. And I went to John Sawyer, who was a former colleague at the Post-Dispatch as well. And he was in charge of the Pulitzer Center. And he found some dough to support us. And we were off and running and writing stories, for a few years. And I was not only, and also involved in this was my wife, Sally. And we kind of had a mom and pop operation going, and we created a diverse board to give us some guidance and support. And for a few years, that's how we rolled. Then I get a call from, I guess it's Sarah's predecessor, giving me a heads up saying, our publisher, Chris Keating, is thinking of setting up a nonprofit. And I just wanted to let you know that would, do stories in the community. And I thought, at first I thought, oh no, I'm going to be competing and raising money against each other, perhaps. And I didn't know Chris, but I figured he had some marketing savvy, or he wouldn't have gotten to the point where he was owning or co-owning half a dozen alternative weeklies across the country, and he had staff. And then I thought, wait, this could be really great, because we could, I have the nonprofit designation and he doesn't yet. And if I get together with him, I can offer, he could be immediately a nonprofit, and I can immediately have folks from his organization bolstering what we were doing. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Okay, so
we're on the 110th floor there.
Sarah, anything to add?
I guess I would add, it took sort of some figuring out how was this all going to work, but I think we came together roughly a year ago. That's around the time I joined this project. And I think Dick and I started talking, and we started talking to other people who were somewhat involved and somewhat interested in trying to help local journalism. And I think, my boss's original intent was, let's find a way that we can advance local journalism in St. Louis. We all know that publications can't do the sort of in-depth coverage that they want to do, that they don't always do a good job of bringing up young people, especially people from marginalized backgrounds. And maybe these are ways that a nonprofit could step in and help in these two key areas that are going to be essential if local journalism wants to be anything more than just the daily grind. And so those have sort of been the two focuses of this organization since we sort of came together and formed the River City Journalism Fund. And we've now had a year of publishing stories. We have our first fellow, and we're just kind of like figuring it out. We're building it as we go. And we're sort of building it on this framework that Dick created with the original Before Ferguson, Beyond Ferguson.
Yeah, I guess we should say that the concept really was that we would produce these stories and we would offer them free to local media, legacy media, St. Louis American, Post-Dispatch, Riverfront Times, St. Louis Magazine. There's several more involved. And so they wouldn't have, A, they wouldn't have to pay for it. B, they wouldn't have to do kind of the heavy lift in terms of editing and, getting these stories ready to go. There was their contribution as well. They put in the time to shepherd the story into their publications and to work with us, and then, of course, give us credit, at the top of the bottom of the story, saying where this came from. And every entity that we worked with, St. Louis Public Radio was another one. They had their own standards and practices and ways of going about things, and we really had to figure out how is it that we could make this not only free but easy for them to work with us. And so that's an ongoing proposition, because sometimes the leadership of these publications changes, and then you have to create a whole nother relationship and trust in going forward.
Well, how does the process work in terms of getting people to write stories? Do you have ideas and you go out to look for writers? Do writers come to you with ideas? Does it work both ways? What is the way you get the stories put together?
Yeah.
Sarah, you take that one.
Yeah, I guess I've always believed as an editor that the best ideas bubble up from the ground, as opposed to some editor saying, I've got this plan and, I'm going to chart this all out. I want to get story ideas from people who are in the community and talking to people. So we have kind of an open and ongoing request for proposals. Any journalist who is writing, we're more focused on writing than we are on broadcast or documentary film. But if somebody is a writer or a photojournalist living in the St. Louis area, they are welcome to make a proposal. And we have sort of a 2-page, it's meant to be very simple, just, we're just asking for answers to questions as opposed to flowery language. And we've been sharing this proposal form with journalists all around the community. They then come to us with their best idea. And that then goes to an advisory board of working journalists who can give their sort of frank thoughts on, like, yeah, I like this proposal. I'm not seeing anyone doing anything with this. Or, hey, this is a lot like a story that we did just last year. They give their thoughts on that. And then it goes to the journalism committee, which are people outside of journalism, but are the decision makers for the nonprofit. And they either give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether it should get the funding. And so these ideas are kind of, they're bubbling up from writers who are working in the area. And then we're figuring out ways to facilitate the good ones and get them into the existing sort of distribution model of our local publications.
So where is this explanation of what you're looking for? Where is this on? Is this on your website, or where is this available?
It's a 2-page PDF that we share it with anybody who asks. I think there's a thing on our website saying, if you're interested in learning more, here's the email address. And we're hopeful that any journalist good enough to turn in a story could figure out how to write us. And then we very quickly give them the proposal form and, answer any questions they have. And we found that we can get people an answer on their proposal usually in about 2 to 3 weeks. So it's kind of a quick rolling basis where we're just trying to get as many people funded as fast as we can. And we ask the journalists who are making the proposals, how much would you like to be paid to write this story? And we knew we were kind of taking a risk with that. Like, what if someone comes in with a great proposal and they want $10,000? Like, I don't even know if we have $10,000 at the bank at the point that we were rolling out ready for proposals. But we found people are coming in and they're saying, yeah, I'm honestly assessing that this is going to take a couple weeks of my time. This is a realistic ask. And we're finding that what they're asking is something that we have been able to say yes to every proposal that our committee has liked. We've had the funds. So that's been exciting.
I don't want to say money is no object, but we typically pay more than freelancers can get from the publications that we've talked about as a straight up freelancer, because we really respect their talent and the time and their diligence that they put in, and legacy media isn't meeting that, can't live up to that kind of respect just because their economics are sideways at this point. So our funders, they don't even say, they don't ever question what we pay folks. They just give us the dough and trust that we'll spend it wisely. And we really we examine every nickel that goes out for things that are not reporter related. We have no essential, very little overhead.
Yeah.
Money for software and things like that, but we try to preserve all the funds that we get, and so that we can put it in the pockets of the reporters and the photographers and the other people who are producing stories.
Okay,
Yeah.
before we go on, let me give you the opportunity to tell everybody what your website is.
It's rcjf.org. So that's where people can find information about following up on, making a proposal, or if they want to donate, we try to make that pretty easy on there as well. I want to just piggyback on what Dick was saying there. As an editor of a publication, I know what we're paying, and I know what other publications in town are paying for freelance submissions. That's something I have to be cognizant of. And it has bothered me for a long time, just how low those rates have gotten. I talked to freelancers from 30 years ago who say that's half of what we used to make in the 90s, And so I think this is a chance where if somebody wants to do something that's a really meaty piece of journalism and they know it's going to take a month of digging, that they can come in and say, yeah, I want to be paid for a month's worth of work. And that's something that I don't know that any local media outlets are able to pay for them to do. And that's part of what we're trying to correct with this philanthropic money. Dick mentioned how low the overhead is. We have no paid employees. I'm volunteering my time. Dick is volunteering his time. Every dollar we raise, we're trying to put like 99 cents of it right back into journalism. And that's been kind of exciting.
Can you go into a little bit more about the criteria you use for deciding, whether to fund an idea?
Yeah, so neither of us are in the committee of decision makers. We're just both parts of this process of trying to get good proposals to them. My understanding is that they're looking for a story that is important to St. Louis or important to the region, something that helps get at the truth about life here. They're looking for a story that hasn't already been done to death and that won't be done if we don't do it. Something that's kind of a gap in the coverage. They're looking for something that can be done professionally. And I do believe that they give an extra thumb on the scale to something that would cover marginalized communities, or something where there's a writer involved who comes from one of those communities themselves. So we're looking to get voices out there that you're not already going to see on the front page of the Post-Dispatch, or stories that the RFT isn't already covering, that St. Louis Magazine isn't already on top of.
Has it been a case more often that somebody comes to you with an idea, or you have an idea and you go out to try and find somebody who will do it?
It's been people are coming to us with ideas. I think Dick is more the exception to this, in that he's had a couple of ideas that he's sort of put in motion. But I think most of the proposals, it has been freelance writers coming to us and saying, this is something I want to do. There's nobody else in town who has the bandwidth to take this on. Would you guys give me the funding to do it?
Yeah. So the story. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dick.
Usually, where the ideas that I'm pushing is usually to encourage young writers that I've found in the community. I'm sort of fancy myself a talent scout, as it were, looking for young voices and people who have something to say, and maybe they're a little raw in terms of they haven't been to journalism school particularly, but they're good writers. And I have people who Chris King comes to mind particularly, who used to be the editor of the St. Louis American. He also teaches at Washington University. He's brought to my attention a couple of people who fill that bill, and then we work with them and kind of coach them up, and sometimes we start with something that they had been thinking about, and I said, well, we can turn that into help you turn that into a story. So there are two things about that. Is one is, well, how do you put a pitch together for your story? Maybe they've never done that before, so I help a little bit with that, and then once it gets approved, I help them write the story, turn it into a piece of journalism.
So are there buckets in which you'd like the stories to fall? Would you like arts? Would you like politics? Would you like crime? like civic growth, or is
All the above now.
anything goes?
I think, my prejudice, and again, I'm not a decision maker. I'm just there to sort of help keep this process moving and to keep the decision makers on top of the proposals that have hit their inbox. But I think we could never have too many sort of serious, in-depth investigative pieces that help dig into the injustices or the problems in this town. That's not to say I'm not going to be looking for a good positive story too, but if somebody wants to do a series that goes in depth on why something isn't working, I'm always going to be excited about that. I will say the exception, we recently were able to commission Jeanette Cooperman to write a profile of a woman who was just turning 100 and had a remarkable life. And this was just such a joy, and it got such a great reaction that I'm realizing it shouldn't be all about problems. But let's face it, there's enough problems in this town and not enough reporters to go around. Dick, I'm sure you'd have a slightly different answer to that question.
Giving a voice to the unheard is, for me, kind of the bottom line. Now, I really, when we were before Ferguson, beyond Ferguson, it was all about racial equity. And it still is, but now it's part of a larger panorama, if you will, of things going on in the community. But you can look at the arts, you can look at education, you can look at health. There's always a story to be written that gives voice to the unheard.
So once the story is assigned and the story is written and the story is turned in, who decides from there? Is it any good? Does it need editing? Where should we try to place it? That sort of thing.
Well, so part of the proposal is they can tell us if they're already talking to a publication, if they already have an editor lined up. If they don't, Dick and I are both, very eager to volunteer our services. I think we both really enjoy editing. But if they're like, yeah, I have already talked to somebody at St. Louis Magazine and they are interested in running this, or, the Jewish Light made a proposal, something they wanted to do but couldn't afford to do in-house, they're going to just be editing that. And then one of the other questions that's on the proposal is, would you like our help sharing this with other publications? So somebody might come in and say, I have a proposal. I want this just to run in the Jewish Light. And the decision makers can say yes to that. But if they're coming in and saying, I have a great story, I'm not sure where it makes sense for this to run. Part of what I've been involved in doing is reaching out across publications to say, this is actually something that would be really interesting to your readers. I'm going to get you a draft of this a week before it has to run. And you, as the editor of this publication, you tell me if this is something you're interested in. And if you want any editing changes to it, let's all talk about that. And we have found that many local publications are excited about, here's a chance to get this story that is pretty much edited and ready to go. It just maybe needs, they're going to have their own smaller changes to it, which is great. But it comes with photographs already commissioned. It comes all set and ready to share. And all we're asking for is that credit. So,
yeah. So the publication.
We'd love to have the stories in more than one venue. So there've been a number of stories that have been in the Riverfront Times and also on St. Louis Public Radios. One in the Jewish Light that was also in the St. Louis American. And, if you start with, that in some ways, that's a little bit of our special sauce. If any story is, just generated from one of these organizations, it's just going to stay with that organization. And, somebody may pick up and, public radio may pick up and interview somebody who wrote that story, but we intentionally want to have as many eyes on that story as we can possibly get. And if you think about, if you were to do the sort of a Venn diagram over the readership that is shared between, say, the St. Louis American and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, they do not have that many readers in common. And, certainly the Jewish Light does not have many readers in common with, say, the Catholic Review, right? But so we try to be ambassadors for the story and make sure that as much of the community as possible reads the story and engages with it. So
these stories are made available without charge to the to the publications or the radio stations or whatever. So I know you talked a little bit about funding before. What kind of budget do you have, or is there a list of funders available on your website, that sort of thing?
There is. Yeah, if you go to rcjf.org, you can see all the people who gave, I think up through late spring. I need to update that because they continue to kind of come in, which has been great. And Dick could speak more to who is supporting this, but I would say it's been almost entirely individuals who just believe in good journalism and have been willing to step up. I think there have been a couple of foundations that are also in that mix, which has been great.
At any point, go ahead, Dick.
In the early going, as I mentioned, we got great support from Richard Weil and from the Pulitzer Center. And then as we got more and more stories out there and got noticed, we would have gatherings where we would talk. We actually bring some of the people we wrote about to gatherings, and the people who did the writing to a gathering. And soon a lot of people were sending us 25 or $50 at a time. I would use my birthday on Facebook to raise money. Just all, and we
shameless.
Were, of course,
you're just shameless.
Yeah, part of the Give St. Louis Give STL Day. We've done that, and generated that kind of thing. And it was guerrilla fundraising for sure. And that's I remember there was one fellow who I lived in my condominium, and I had an extra parking space, and he said, could I have your other parking space? And I said, sure. And a couple of weeks later, I said, would you have lunch with me? I took him out to lunch and asked him for some big dollars, and he was generous enough to give to me. And I said, I bet you didn't know that parking place cost you $10,000. So that's, whatever it takes.
So was there ever any thought of trying to work with other journalism groups? I know the Press Club at one point used to give enterprise grants to writers, and there's SPJ, there's the Black Journalists. I mean, why did you need to do your own organization instead of work with others that are already existing?
Well, actually, I had worked with the Press Club, and actually the Press Club I'm trying to remember what the story was, gave us a grant to support a story that we did. The Press Club, and actually I started the enterprise journalism program at the Press Club several years ago. And so what I found, though, was the Press Club does a lot of things. They're not solely focused on enterprise journalism or they have a contest for journalists and things like that, but they got a lot of irons in the fire, and they weren't going to be solely focused on what we have been interested in. We've also been in touch with the Missouri Independent and talking about cooperating with them on stories. I'm the Marshall Project, which is building some capacity here in St. Louis. We've been in touch with them. There's actually a story that I hope to share with them shortly. And we try to find out what's going on with everybody who is doing social justice journalism in our region, to see how can we cooperate, how can we share the stories that we're developing with one another.
So given staff cuts and other cutbacks in journalism for legacy organizations, is this the future of local journalism, you think?
I don't know. I will say it has been a great joy and great gift to get to work on this in the last year, because it's a chance to do some stories that I know we couldn't have done, without these additional resources. And that's been wonderful. I will say, nonprofits are a lot of work. The structure is not as simple as I'm used to working for a for-profit company where we can just make decisions. And now we have this whole board of directors and, boy, it seems like kind of an inefficient system, but I love that it is working as well as it is working and that it's providing this great stream of stories to St. Louis. And so I guess my hope is that it can advance local journalism and that it can continue to work to get stories in front of readers, by working with legacy media outlets. I really don't want those legacy media outlets to go away. We need that guy at the Post-Dispatch that's covering the meeting every week. It can't just be all about the big projects. So
yeah, we really want to support them, though. I have to say, how journalists are drawn to bad news and dysfunction. It's like everything was functioning properly, what we have to do. And sometimes this dysfunction or this the fact that legacy media is in so much trouble calls attention to what we are doing and gives people a reason to support the kind of work we are doing. And what's nice about what we have here is that it's still maybe it would be great if we had a really large organization, all the stuff that comes with that. But then we'd have to have an HR department, and then we'd have to have all that stuff, all that bureaucracy that actually weighs down legacy media at this point, right? And so we have a case to make. We are nimble, more nimble than many can be. We can get stories turned around quickly. We can get it out there, give it to legacy media for free. And it's great to be involved in an enterprise where we're just making this stuff up as we go along. And that is so creative. And for a guy who's, past 70, not as old as you, Dale, but still well up there, that really keeps the juices flowing.
Okay, well, my juices are about run out. I have no more questions. Anything else you think we ought to conclude on?
I guess I continue to hope and
Journalists who have nothing to say. I've never seen this before.
He knows I'm just going to charge right in there. So sorry, Nick. I continue to hope and believe that there is an appetite for important, meaty local journalism. And I feel proud of what we've done in the last year to bring that to people in St. Louis. And I feel like we're only getting started. This last year, we went from trying to shape a board and bring together these two ideas into this hydra. And I'm like, boy, I think we're going to be able to do a lot in the next 12 months. So,
and I will say that people like Sarah, who are in their prime, let me put that, calling Sarah a genius journalist is damning her with faint praise. She can do it all. She's right in that sweet spot where she knows so much that can be useful in this topsy-turvy environment and bring things along. So I'm just really appreciate her work.
Well, I want to thank you both for taking your time, and I appreciate it. Good luck with what sounds like a great effort. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
thank you.